Hello and welcome to the Good Girl Confessional. I am your host, Sandy Lowrys, and the Good Girl Confessional is proudly brought to you by WB40, Women Beyond 40 magazine, tackling ageism head on. Today in the confessional, I am really excited to talk to this beautiful woman. Her name is Gillian Holden. Gill is the founder of Clover Lane Consulting, and she's on a mission to actually reimagine the way we think about recruitment and bringing on staff to organisations. But more than that, she is an incredible supporter of other women, and she does a lot of pro bono consulting work and coaching for women who have fallen on hard times to help them get back into the workforce. She does this in conjunction with some pretty amazing organisations, which we will talk about today. I know you're going to love Gill just as much as I did. Please welcome her to the confessional, Gillian Holden. Oh, and welcome to the confessional, Gillian. How are you?
I am fabulous in Melbourne on this beautiful sunny day. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you are so welcome. And isn't it gorgeous? It's
Yes.
We've had all the seasons in a couple of days, of course, because this is Melbourne.
Yeah.
But today is beautiful.
Isn't that? And yesterday's storm, how was that? It was incredible. Yeah, it's a beautiful day, so let's make the most of it.
Absolutely. I'm so thrilled to have you on board because I love so much of what you are doing. I think you're quite innovative. So let's talk about your amazing business, which is Clover Lane Consulting, and how you are changing the way workplaces are looking at talent acquisition.
Yeah. Well, for me, Clover Lane started really a long time ago in my mind. Although born through COVID, at the onset of COVID, it's a COVID-born business. I like to introduce it like that because that alone suggests that we can actually do anything, no matter what the timing is. But the concept of Clover Lane was something that I had envisaged probably 10 years ago. And it was all about employment and how we create a space that includes absolutely everybody. And also, I felt almost futuristic back then, because my way of thinking was, why are we seeping through resumes and looking for the catchphrases that we're wanting to see in an individual when there's so much more to a person than what's put on the paper? We can say anything on paper, but who are they as individuals? And how do we really dig deep and not only find out who they are, but who they want to be? Because actually, who they want to be is more important than who they are, right? So I had this thought process, years ago, and I was shut down so many times. This was an absolutely crazy idea. The world wasn't ready for recruitment of that form. It just wasn't, and it wasn't in any conversation that I would ever have with employment that I was in, or with any organization around this concept. They'd laugh in my face and say, "What are you talking about? This makes no sense. Of course we need to see resumes. Of course we need to see things that represent where they've come from, not where they want to be." It just wasn't a thing. And then I had gone through my own adverse situations, let's say, life challenges that really knocked that whole idea on the head. I had to put it to bed. I couldn't cope with the pressure of wanting to bring this to life. It was too much work, and actually I was fearful of what would happen. And so I did. I put it to bed. I let it go, and I thought, if it's meant to arrive again in the future, it will. And sure enough, COVID hit, and I was employed in an organisation, and I was stood down on St. Patrick's Day. And 2020, St. Patrick's Day, I just arrived back from Ireland, and I had a lovely time away, and we worked for 2 weeks, and then we were all stood down. And that very day, that night, my partner said to me, "Well, you've been talking about this dream you've had for all of these years. There's no better time to bring that back to life." So on St. Patrick's Day, Clover Lane Consulting was born, and I have continued what I started all those years ago. And it's just been accepted in a completely different way. And of course, why? Because COVID's pushed us into a new way of having to recruit and, seek out those candidates that we need for our organisation. And it turns out all of those futuristic things that I had been thinking about 10 years ago are now coming to life. And whether they like it or not, it is what it is. They have to really look at different ways to bring on those people.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been watching, I suppose, this is a global phenomenon that is happening, but this thing that is called the Great Resignation, and lots of people leaving one job. What are your views on this? It's quite phenomenal.
It is phenomenal, and what's even more important is I'm speaking to clients every day, and some of them are so not ready. It's not ready for the Great Resignation. Nobody really is ready for that, let's be honest. So we have to think quickly and we have to be ahead of the game. But they're not ready to accept it. So it's the acceptance that this is where we are. And often I will have conversations where they'll say, give it a couple of months, it'll go back to normal. It'll all go back to normal. And the reality is, my response to that is, I urge you to change the way you're thinking, because if you don't, you are going to crumble. You cannot have the mind frame that the way that was is ever going to happen again. We're not going back to that. There are drastic and great changes. I embrace every single one of them because they are exactly what I would have liked to achieve 10 years ago, and here we are in a situation that we have no choice now. We have to accept this new norm, and the reality is, again, that the power is in the candidate's hands. We now have to look at organisations or our organisations and say, how are we making this attractive for people to be a part of? We have to sell our business to the candidates. They don't have to sell themselves to us anymore. And that's what we're looking at. It's that simple.
It's quite phenomenal. Yeah. And I think because of the onset of COVID during a pandemic, people suddenly had, everyone's working from home, something that a lot of organisations swore could never happen. And not only is it happening, but it's happening incredibly successful with high productivity, right? Yeah. But so I guess that for those that don't know what the Great Resignation means, really it's so many people leaving one job or an entire career to seek out a new life path, and it's happening with people doing it in droves.
It really is. And so if you were to break that down a little bit and talk about what does that even mean, up until recently, up until this past 2 years, we were tied to our careers so severely, so mentally, captured within our career. 9 to 5 was a thing. Arriving on time was rewarded. Staying beyond your 5 p.m. end was looked upon as a really good thing. That was positive. You're a good worker if you do these things. Now it's okay if you've got to drop the children before school, before you start. We're recognizing that moms are so capable of being moms and career women at the same time. And not only that, they're able to do it from their home office and achieve great things. All of the control that was held prior to COVID, we've had to let go of the reins. And within the letting go, magic has happened. And we can't deny that magic. We can't deny that there's been incredible productivity in the midst of this. And that alone changes the way we, should be investigating our organisations. What can we do now that's not just temporarily changed, but what can we do that ongoing offers our people a whole range of employment opportunities? And imagine then the candidate pool that you open up to. where, as we know it right now, ageism is a thing. Ableism is another thing. And today being the International Day of people with disabilities, it's an important topic. Bring that back to the resume screening, which I absolutely will do everything I can to rid and move beyond, because screening candidates who are capable of the role that they've applied for should include a whole range of people without our judgment. So it leads on to so many other things. And when we look at the pre-COVID way of doing things, the strict kind of regime that we were locked into, and now we have this place where we can say, wow, there's so much productivity with all of the platforms that we can embrace long term, and really nobody needs to get left behind. There's no need for it. It's just not necessary anymore. It never was necessary. But if you were to try and strategize why it was happening, there was a whole host of bias behaviors that brought that to the forefront in the past. Now we can scratch those biases, we can challenge them and say, let's open this up. Who else can we advertise these roles to and encourage to apply?
I think it's fantastic, and I'm so glad that you actually raised the whole topic of ableism, because I have a lot of friends who are proud, disabled, brilliant people who are saying exactly that. This has opened up a whole wave of possibilities for so many people who may ridiculously have been overlooked for roles previously, and where people can work comfortably from their homes. But even able-bodied people, it means that we can work really from anywhere. And the world is now our oyster. Absolutely.
And there's a whole. I say this to everyone, and I'm having these conversations. I'm saying this to every client I meet because it's important that they understand. But I'm having conversations with candidates from a whole range of different industries, to be honest, every day. And where we were again locked into situations where we all need to feel that we can flourish. So wanting to have financial abundance is absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. We want to grow. That's acceptable. We're all in the same boat, right? There should be no wrongs with that for somebody to request or want to flourish in that way. And in the conversations that I would have had in the past, that would have probably been one of the first conversations we'd have around what it looked like to progress in a career. But what's changed is we're actually seeing, I hear this all the time, and I feel like there's many recruiters out there that would be the same, that the things that candidates are seeking right now is flexibility. They want mental health support and care. And they want to work for sustainable organizations who genuinely care about the world. And these are the three things that I'm finding that I'm having conversations. When I ask candidates, what is it that brings you to a role that would really speak to your values? They're the three things, not always in that order, but they're the three things that now pipe up more so than salary. What I'm finding is they're happy to almost let go of the salary increase. Not that they want to not do well, but the other areas have become more important, or the criteria has changed. And that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Because when you think about, let's say, somebody who would work best at home, they might renege the salary increase for the ability to be able to work in that in the freedom of coming and going. Hybrid work is a thing, some people, a lot of us like that in office, but in saying that, we want to work at home too, because it gives us the ability to be able to do many other things. So when you think of that, how does that open up to ableism? The candidates who have been facing that roadblock. Ageism. I mean, why is that even a thing, right? What are we doing? How can we be in a situation where candidates bring themselves all the way to 40 plus, 45 plus, and then for them to hit a roadblock with all of that experience? It makes no sense to me. And the other important thing about that is, as a recruiter, as somebody who works in recruitment and talent acquisition, we will always be faced with those challenges from clients. they will always, without thinking, throw in their ideas around, well, no, I was thinking I could have, this is the type of person that I'd be wanting to hire. The worst thing we can do is to just agree. Okay, no problem. And that happens regularly. From my professional perspective, our next question has to be why.
Why?
We have to ask why. We've got to break it down. Like, this is what you think you need. But I always then will follow that up with, are you ready for me to tell you what you really need? No, I'm not for everyone, and that's okay.
No, and that is 100% okay, Jill. But I think, though, that the world needs more people like you who are shining a light on these issues faced when recruiting, because I'm a woman who's 52. I'm clearly, I'm an advocate for women over the age of 40, 50, 60. I on a daily basis, fight against the issues of ageism, which is why I started Women Beyond 40 magazine. Yes. And those things are so important, because you're right, women face ageism all the time. Yeah. From the age of 40 onwards, women are faced with ridiculous challenges, including and I hear this from so many women in corporate spaces where they said, I started to feel invisible around the 45-year mark. Yeah. I was ignored in meetings. I was overlooked for promotions. My ideas were no longer listened to. And it's a common thing.
It's such a common thing, and it's such a shame. It drives me insane. And, losing your voice. And here's the thing. That's even tricky as well, isn't it? Because for lots of us women, we only find our voice when we're kind of at that, often in the 30s, we find how to use our voice more effectively, and always, still cautious. Whenever I speak to them, we're still cautious, but we may have found more of what our voice really means, So we're only at the beginning of really grasping that, and then we lose it again so soon, or we feel shut down by, or not heard, not appreciated. And that's such a shame. It's not acceptable as far as I'm concerned. And I feel, to be an advocate for at least encouraging women to continuously use that voice until the end, as far as I'm concerned. There's so much to share. And there's young women who are following you, and, we need to continue that, because who else are we influencing along the way?
Oh, absolutely brilliant point. And the thing is, it's women as we get older, we have experience, we carry extraordinary amounts of wisdom. It's not just our professional knowledge that we carry with us, but life experience. Yeah. And, we're quite wise when it comes to what works, what doesn't work. And, I get really annoyed, and I get to speak to some really dynamic, brilliant women on here, female leaders, female CEOs, women at the top of their game, innovators, entrepreneurs, writers, authors, artists, whatever. Yes. Right? You just realise that the resilience of women, the wisdom of women is quite extraordinary. And organisations need to pay more attention.
They need to pay a whole lot of attention to this. There's magic. There's so much magic being dismissed every day. And even bring that into the skill base, right? So, again, going back to that, what have you done before versus what can we do in the future? What is it that I'm trying or aiming to achieve? I think that is such a much more important question than where we've been. Because where we've been, for each of us, will be different. And, I have met and placed many candidates where the skill level may not be up to scratch, but their desire to be there is so the passion involved with that is so present, right? So you'll find that if you find a candidate who's, deeply passionate about wanting to get somewhere, the work and effort that they'll put in to make that happen is just phenomenal. often versus the skill set that somebody may have had from an academic level. Not dismissing it, wonderful, well done you, but it's not the be all and end all, and it narrows down that candidate pool when we don't open up those opportunities for women to say, okay, well, what is it? How can we break this down to create a platform for employment and give them an opportunity that they can grow upon, you know?
So true. And listen, one of the things that you do that I am fascinated with, and I really wanted to chat to you about, is that you do a lot of pro bono work for people who find themselves maybe down on their luck, or who have been over, you know, whatever's going, they're having a tough time in their life. And you're doing like pro bono work, working with them for free. Talk to us about that, and also the donations that you do and how you are helping so many people.
Yeah, and look, I hope that the next year will see us helping so many more people, firstly, on a greater scale. And I'd love it to get to a point where there were so many more people joining in on this initiative. But when I started Clover Lane, I sat in my head many nights thinking, if I make this work, it can't just be about me being successful in business. Sure, I want to be successful. That's, you know, I make no apologies for that whatsoever, you know. I've worked hard at this. But I want other people to be successful along the journey too. And from my own experiences, I've had so many moments within my life where I've felt completely not worth it, not capable, pretty useless, to be honest. And that comes from going through all kinds of different unfortunate events. That doesn't mean it was all bad, but there was plenty of things, as we all go through crazy times where you think, you know, what else is there for me? Maybe nothing. And then you start doubting yourself, and you know, your brain starts talking, and it's not a pleasant experience. One thing I do know is that family violence is a place where that just really takes over, you know, the self-worth that we should feel for ourselves, right? So it disappears, it's gone. It becomes a non-existence because you're thinking more about survival, right? And you're thinking about your children, or what happens next, or the next meal, or how am I going to pay my rent. So who am I and what am I worth? It doesn't even become a question anymore. And I spoke to so many women over the years, and I thought, why are these women not encouraged to, how can we, or not why are they not, because we know why they're not. They're not in a place where they can mentally think of this. But what if they were encouraged to think more about saving themselves through financial security? And how do we do that? We open up employment opportunities so they can get themselves back on track. But how do they do that when they probably haven't been able to work? Because one of the components of family violence is financial abuse, right? So often it'll be a case where they haven't even had bank accounts. So there's so many layers to this, and I thought, okay, well, what can I do? What's my part in this? I work in employment. How about I start a not-for-profit part of the business called Take a Chance on Me? And Take a Chance on Me will focus on those individuals who really have no idea where to go from here. They're not starting their journey with me leaving their family violent space. They will have already gone on that part of the journey, because the reality is, for most women, when they leave, they haven't got the time nor the capacity to think about work when they're trying to keep themselves safe. So by the time they get to me, I call it like the train journey, right? So they hop on the train, and they're out of that family violence space. There's a whole host of people that support them on that first carriage, and they need them there. Those people are required, because it's a dangerous place to be. Leaving is an awful place, and it's about safety. And as they move through the carriages, the people of support lessen. They're not there. It becomes an emptier carriage of support networks. And at the end of it all, when they're finally in that safe space and their children are safe and they're back on their feet somehow or another, they get an opportunity to say, what about me? Where do I go from here? And that's the carriage I'm on. That's what I say. I'm on the end carriage. When you're ready to get back to work, when you're ready to find you again, meet me there. I'll be ready for you there. So I take them through. We created this lovely, soft intro to coaching. It's really a get to know, a comfort space for these women. They get to know me, and I get to know them quite personally. But most importantly, our journey is about getting them back on track, giving them a platform so they can rebuild and find a way to get back into employment one way or another. And not just about a job, but about finding what speaks to their soul. All of those years where they never had the opportunity to do that. Now let's really dig into that and what does that mean for you? And it's just such an incredible journey for me too, to be with them on. And I encourage every organisation, I say to everyone I meet, if there's something that you can do for somebody else that's out there that's just hit hard times, do it. It's the most rewarding thing to say that I've helped you through this period of your life, and here you are in work now rebuilding. What an incredible journey. Now we've opened that up, and I started off with the family violence space. I've just taken on I've got a newly appointed associate director, Greg, who's absolutely incredible, and he just loved this idea as well. And he said to me, can we open it up to perhaps people who've been in prison and are now on the flip side wanting to get back on track, rebuild their lives. And realistically, now anyone who's hit those hard times, that can't afford coaching, potentially needs their LinkedIn or their resume updated, and then the other side, the other connection to that is the groom to go piece. So when I place a candidate in my profession in Clover Lane, I donate funds to Groom to Go. And so that means that if you're a candidate who can't afford their interview clothes or whatever it may be, that you can coach with me, we get you ready, and then you're off to Groom to Go, and they will give you your interview clothes. I think it's 3 or 4 different sets of clothes that you've got then ready for your interviews, and you're set to go. And so it works as I like to call it, the ecosystem of employment services.
You are absolutely phenomenal. I am sitting here, I'm getting a little bit emotional even listening to this. I love that so much, and that you have this really beautiful holistic view of people getting back into the workforce. And as you say, this space of women leaving a violent situation, especially with children, with or without children, is bloody tough. And even women who are not in a violent situation, but a lot of women, going through divorce, find themselves in a situation where they've lost all of their self-esteem. Quite often they've lost money, and it's just a really difficult place to start again. I know myself, when I was, divorced at 41, I was, a sole parent with 3 kids. And I was really strapped for cash, and it was a really scary time. How am I going to feed my kids? How am I going to keep my kids in school? All of the things. And for me, I know I was really privileged and very lucky that so I had to shut down a business. We had a business. And I was just very lucky to walk into a job straight away. Very lucky. And even that, I felt like it was just sheer luck. It was the first job interview I went for. I knew I had to get a job, because otherwise how was I going to live? And I was driving home and found out I had that job. Now, I feel really lucky that I was in a headspace where I could engage in a job interview and get myself a job. I mean, I look back now and I lived a life. I was living in a haze at that point, to be honest.
I know that haze so well, believe me. I know that
and
haze.
Then,
it's very, and I guess that's what makes it I'm passionate about, because I've been in that haze too. I've been married twice and divorced twice. And
Me too.
oh, have you? Yeah. So welcome to the club. But the end of my second marriage was an absolute. I was numb. I was completely numb, and I had 3 beautiful daughters, and I had to say to my girls at the time, girls, I'm not ready to be a great mom right now. You're gonna I have to heal. And God loved them. I look back and I think, you know, they were so good. You know, they were young, you know, and I was a mom, and they were trying to support me, bless them, and I was trying to be a good mom. So there's so many things, and then you've got to go through the forgiveness of self, and there's a whole host of things that we bring ourselves through. But but for me, a part of the coaching for me when I'm with these women is talking to them about getting out in nature, because I remember for me back then, one of the things that made me feel like I was alive, and it was accidental really, but I remember feeling so numb one morning, and I poured myself a coffee and I walked to the beach with no shoes on. Thankfully I lived across the road from the beach, so it was just a great place to be. And I remember sitting on the beach for 2 hours or so. I cried for the entire time, but when I left I felt so much better. And I thought to myself, I remember feeling so connected to how better I felt. And then the next morning I done the same thing. And then I kept doing it over and over again. And then I joined a running group, and then that was bringing me out in nature more. And I was kind of compelled to stay connected to that. And that was like medicine for my soul. And I now encourage, if they can, any woman that's gone through an experience like that, to find nature and ask it to help you heal, because it actually does help. And then the other thing is, find other women. Find your circle. Find your circle, because they will support you.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm part of their circle often now, so it's good, you know.
And, you know, you sound like you're such a beautiful part of that circle of women, you know, of the sisterhood. Yeah. I think that's probably the greatest advice when people ask me, you know, when I meet women and they're going through a separation or divorce, or they find themselves sort of in traumatic situation. They say, how did you get through all of that? That's one of the, absolutely. I do remember sitting on the beach many, many times. The beach was my go-to place where I did cry a lot.
Quite a lot there.
And there's something very soothing about the ocean, and that allows you, I suppose, you know, to just let it all out. But I think you're right. One of the big things that I say to all women, regardless of what stage they are in their life, and even, you know, this is women who've never been through huge trauma as well. Seek out other women. Find your group, because, you know, women are so empowering and uplifting. Yeah. And I know one of my big mantras for my business is exactly that, helping other women to rise, and understanding that regardless of where we are, it really costs nothing to help other women come up, and to remind them of how amazing they are, to share their stories, to shout out to them when they're doing great things. That's massive.
It's such a big thing. It's such a big thing. And, you know, women, I obviously speak to a lot of women, you know, regularly, and although it's been a little bit quieter this past couple of months, because the strategy is building for next year and what we're going to do. So I've had this kind of really quiet time. And I've noticed, I don't know what you think, Sandy, but I feel like everything has been so noisy this past few months. So I tend to retreat when that happens. And it's not necessarily that I'm retreating away from the noise, but I always strive to understand what's behind the noise. And I end up, I tend to come up with my own hypotheses around this, you know, and what it is that there's a lot of noise that makes no sense. So I always want to find some valid factual purpose behind the noise. So you'll see all these things on LinkedIn, and you know, and I get told every day, you're not posting enough on LinkedIn, Jill, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. I think I know, but it's just noise out there. I'll post when I've got those factual things to post properly. So what I've done is I've kind of had to take a little break this past couple of months and focus on how I'll move that forward for next year. Because really, and Greg and I had a meeting this morning there talking about what do we need to do for next year that really highlights the pro bono work that we're doing with those people who need it most. And then the strategy around educating the organizations that we work with to leave open some space to bring these people in. And, so it's all about education creation,
Yeah, absolutely. It really is. And I love that. And I think that this is where, when we talk about women, I'm a big believer that people meet other people at exactly the right time and when they're meant to. We'd be thrilled to have you in WB40 magazine next year and talking about all the beautiful stuff that you were doing, but really get that message out there, and that's
so
important
great.
because I think what you're doing, and there will be women out here listening or watching this and thinking, I'm that woman. I'm lost. I don't know what to do. And for them to even know that there are people out there who give a shit, who really care.
And here's the other thing, Sandy, the other hard thing for women to understand is we're told always that nothing is for free. It's drilled into our minds. Nothing is, you get nothing for free. Nothing. You don't deserve something that's free. It drives me insane.
I agree. That is the message all the time.
So people will say to me, women will come to me and they'll say, so how much will it cost me though? And I'll say, no, nothing. And they say, but what do you mean? They actually find it hard to understand that you're willing to give your time. The reality is it's my time. And sure, time is precious, but so is theirs. And so, to me, that's the balance that this is not something that, I'm not selling my time to women who need me to be there to support them. I am privileged to know that I have the ability to be able to support them on that journey and to be a part of a small piece of the better part of their world. I mean, that's magic, is it not? That's the gold within itself.
No, Jill, that really is. And I think for us, and as I said, when we started our business, for me, part of that value base had to be what was our give back as well. And so we have been giving, since we launched, we've been giving free ad space and editorial to non-profits and people who are doing incredible things to help other women and to support other women. Right. And at the time we were like, well, this is what we can do right now. And then we have this piece for free where we highlight micro and small businesses that are run by women. And especially those little micro businesses that came out of the pandemic because women were like, I have to make money, I'm just going to do this thing. But they don't always get the exposure that they need as well. And while at the time we were like, I wish we could do more, we then had non-profits actually saying, this is not a small thing. A lot of places will not do this for us. Yeah. We didn't realise, but I think there's definitely got to be, if every business operated in a way where we said, well, what's our give back to?
What's our give back? There's a big thing that I say this, I think I've said this on every meeting that I've had and podcast that I've been on. In my mind, when I think of give, the word give to me is a precious word, but it's a precious thing. It's a precious act to give. And people will often say it's give and take. It's give and take. It's giving. We're in a habit of saying that it's give and take, but it's not to me. It's give and give. And the whole process of giving, in itself, you receive, because just from your act of give, there's much to take when you walk away from the wonderful act of giving to somebody who needs that time or that service or that person to help them along. The abundance of wonderfulness that comes from that is all I'll ever need, and so it's not give and take, it's always give and give, and just continue to do that.
I agree. And the thing is, for us, you know, I always think of like, you know, it doesn't take much to show that kindness and to give genuinely with some kindness and not expect anything in return. You know, but I love that expression. I think that, you know, that you use that is so beautiful. Give and give.
Give and give, not give and take. Give and give.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. So what is, you know, you've been doing a lot of speculation about next year. I think a lot of our, you know, businesses have been doing that lately because it's been a hell of a 2 years and sort of like heading into this post-COVID world, if you like. So what's on the horizon for you?
So what's the most important thing on the horizon for us is to really now get that word out around Clover Lane, what the ambition is for that, how we are not only finding candidates and opening up diverse range of candidates for organisations moving forward, but then also opening up to the industry specifics that we work with. I've been primarily in healthcare, not-for-profit, and business support and admin and so on. Greg comes with a whole new set of skills, which is wonderful. He's got all kinds like IT, tech startups, and just a whole range of other industry knowledge that he brings to this, which then opens up to a whole new candidate pool. And what we're working with now is getting the information around all of that really, really narrowed down so we can share that information as much as possible on our own website and across our social platforms. And then the other thing is, of course, the not-for-profit part, where we are, for every client that we engage, we want to support a person. So for the two of us, we offer an hour a week each. And think about that. It's not a lot of time, is it? You know, you offer an hour a week for 6 weeks. The program that we've created is a 6-week program, so these individuals will join us for 6 weeks and then be ready to kind of take that next step. And if not, we're still there. We don't disappear. But, you know, that's generally the time frame. And then we send them off to Groom to Go so they can get their clothes for interview and really feel prepared and confident. And then the other part is introducing other organisations to join that and be part of the huddle. So we're in the midst of hopeful to launch an umbrella organisation which will be called the HR Huddle, and that will have all of those businesses that will sit underneath, and anyone that wants to join the huddle will be able to join. And it's really so they can give back. There's nothing that they need to do other than to be part of the huddle means that you're part of a give component, and you sit with Clover Lane with the same mission. So that's our next year, at least hope to, bring on this in a completely different and much bigger way.
Oh, I absolutely love that, and I love everything that you are doing. You really are a beautiful human being, and, you know, generally in talent acquisition in the recruitment space, as you say, we're not used to hearing this kind of conversation, and it's fabulous and incredible.
You know, it's a really interesting thing, Sandy, the recruitment in itself. And look, I know some fabulous talent acquisition business owners and recruiters out there. So this doesn't pigeonhole them all, but there's definitely been a traditional sense of recruitment that has not been good for its name, as far as I'm concerned. It's not been a benefit to those who genuinely care. There has been a salesy approach to what recruitment is. I find you a person, I place them, you give me some dollars, and we move on. And we fingers crossed and hope they last for 3 months, and then we can, bill you again if you need somebody else. And so there's a whole piece that's missing, and that is the care of the actual individual that we're placing in the first place, and equally care of the organisation that we're placing for. So, if we were to kind of use this now, this new way of recruiting and supporting organisations post-COVID or pre-COVID, because we're still right in it, if we were to change the way we were looking at it for the rest from here on, there's so much greatness to come with that. But the reality is we have to recognise it, we have to acknowledge it, and organizations have to be ready. And if they're not ready, they're going to be in trouble. So I encourage them all to, at least investigate what should be.
Yeah, I love that. And let's hope that they're all that there's some people out there hearing that message today from you, and might start thinking differently about the way that they acquire people to work for them and the way that they help and support people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, definitely. It's going to be a huge. Hopefully they hear, and hopefully the message that Greg and I have to share for the new year will be across the board. We'll be able to get that word out. People always say to me, Jill, this is the whole thing about me being vocal, and I tend to go behind the scenes and I do some research. I mean, one of the things, my partner was laughing at me last week. He said to me, there is so much noise about employment out there, but I was behind the scenes trying to really get a grasp of the history of employment. So I started to research hunters and gatherers and what they would have done, and then I came across John Maynard Keynes, who from 1930, and I was reading his story and what his belief would be for this, for the now, and all of it. I was so engrossed in all of this and thinking he was really onto something. Changes did happen, although he had this belief that we'd be working a 15-hour week, and technology would have taken over by now, and we would have, humans would have fallen behind, progressed to a point where we were able to take a step back. And the reality is we're working more hours, or just as many hours at the moment than our parents and grandparents did. So something was a little bit amiss with that, right? But the interesting thing is how we are also intrinsically connected to our past. And the one thing I can say is the change that I recognize that is very much, I feel humans today are going back to the hunter-gatherer way of thinking, and that was really working to live, right? So they worked to live. They certainly didn't live to work. They did work a 15-hour week, and they played and loved and spent family time together in the most of the rest. So I actually have been reading this book called Work by James Sussman. And see, this is what I do. I'll go behind the scenes, find the facts. The noise there's a lot of noise with no facts. And so, but one of the things is that there's a huge connection to what's happening with people now in the midst of COVID, and that we're recognizing that working to live is a whole lot healthier than selling our souls and working 20-hour or 60-hour weeks and having no time left for play and family. So there's big changes here, and I guess that's the way I'm going to focus the business moving forward, and to educate. Again, it's really about that education piece. It's educating the candidates, it's educating the clients, and when they come to us with those biases that we will have because of our history, it's about us having the courage to say, well, why, and what about this, and how about we try something better? And if it's not for them, that's okay, because I'm not for everyone, and that's okay too.
But you will find that you absolutely will make such a huge impact to the businesses that want to open up to you with that discussion. And the rewards are huge. I everyone who's listening to this or watching this can see how passionate you are about this subject. I, for one, am a huge fan of yours now. I think you're brilliant. And
I'm a fan of yours too.
And we're going to put all of your links, obviously, in our show notes and across our socials when we launch this podcast, so that everyone will know how to find you, how to find Clover Lane, how they can follow along, and we will put up a link as well for what is the name of this? The Groom to Go. So we'll put up a link.
Groom to Go is a great connection to Dress for Success. So Groom to Go is actually located in Frankston. I'm on the Mornington Peninsula, so it's just a really good connection. And I'd met Marion Gandhi, who was the principal there at one point, and or the president at one point, and she's look, she's an incredible woman as well. She's really passionate about it. So we now work in sync. You know, there's every placement I make, I donate. So, yeah, you know, we're all in it for the same purpose, I guess.
Absolutely, so wonderful. Thank you for being a woman who seriously helps other women to rise up and to support other women in a really positive and magical way.
Oh, thank you, Sandy. Thanks for recognising that too. That's huge.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for all that you do. As I said to everyone, we will put all the notes up in our show notes. We'll put all the links, and everyone can follow you and your amazing work. Thank you so much for joining me today in the Confessional.
Thanks, Sandy.
Thanks for listening to the Good Girl Confessional podcast. The Good Girl Confessional podcast is brought to you by WB40, Women Beyond 40 magazine, available now at WB40.com. The Good Girl Confessional podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to quality podcasts. We're also now available on YouTube. We chat with really interesting women about their hard-won wisdom, but it really helps us if you can subscribe, like, and share the podcast. Thanks so much for your support. Bye for now.